Okay. Hello, everybody. You guys there?
Hey,
How we doing?
pretty good, pretty good.
Pretty good. What are we going? We're going by Yakub or Kuba? What do you prefer?
Uh, I like Cuba more.
Kuba.
Yeah, it's like in Polish, like whoever, the original name is Jakub, but anyone I know who wants to be called Jakub and not Cuba is pretty uptight. so I so I prefer Cuba.
Awesome. So Kuba, it's great to have you. I see people are just starting to creep in to the space. I'll be honest, this is my first time hosting a space. Personally, I've been a participant, but never a host. So this is new territory for me as well. But it's great to have you.
I'm a newbie here as well. It's my very first Twitter space, so let's see how it goes.
Great. So it's cool. I mean, I think first of all right, let's get started. Be mindful of the time, and hopefully people will join us, and also we'll have this recorded and we'll distribute it afterwards. So even if it's not live, you everybody will get the benefit from it. So we're here with Kuba Chacon. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's perfect.
And Kuba, among other things, is the CMO of Neptune.ai, and also I would say a friend, someone who I've connected with over a year ago at this point, has been very helpful both directly and indirectly in helping me navigate the dev marketing space. So it's great to catch up with you here. And if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember correctly, you are also a chess grandmaster, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm almost a grandmaster. So back in the day, I like to get a grandmaster title. You need to do sort of, let's say, three grandmaster level performances, and then hit a certain rating. And I hit a rating, and I got one grandmaster norm. So I'm, you know, when
Wow.
I quit, I was probably a year ago. It was probably a year to get the title, and I don't know. I should have probably finished that. I didn't. Anyway,
Very cool. It's a very cool credential to have on your resume.
it is. It is. Yeah.
Very cool. I don't know. Does it help you at all with the developer marketing, or it's just a
Um,
cool nugget?
I mean, I think generally understanding how tricky it is to learn something to a high level and actually compete at a very high level at anything, I think it's helpful in your career no matter what. So a lot of skills that come from that time, they help. One particular one that maybe it's going to be interesting for listeners is I mean, it is sort of connected to some other game theory, rules and stuff. But like, um, a lot of the times in marketing, dev marketing as well, you don't quite see the path to, let's say, winning, right? To 10xing your situation or whatever it is, right? And in chess, it is very often that you don't see there's no winning move, right? And then there's
Right.
this rule of the rule of the worst piece. So basically, what you do is like you look at your position, you figure out what's the weakest part of the position, and then you improve that. And then you do that enough times, and you get to a position where it's clear how you win, right? But at the beginning, it wasn't, and you just kept improving those different things that you knew you should have improved, and then at a certain point, the solution is obvious. So I think sometimes it sometimes helps, when you're
I
in a
love that. I love it.
spot
It's
where
almost
you
like the
start.
non-scalables quick wins just to get you to the next step, get more information, get more data, and then move on from
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. Like it's sort of like how deep neural networks learn with gradient descent. You basically gradient descend your way to win, rather than look at the position at the beginning and see the win right away, right? Which is often
Amazing.
impossible.
Amazing. So with that, maybe let's just dive in. I mean, I just want to give a quick intro to the people who might not know me. I mean, I see a couple of fun people in the space here. A special shout out to Pradumna, who's actually our dev advocate here at Lifecycle. And I see our mutual friend Flo has also joined us, and a couple of other folks from around. And so I am head of marketing at Lifecycle. Lifecycle is a dev tools company, and we're early stage, and we're building tools that help development teams collaborate with each other. You, from your angle, you're building dev tools in a slightly different area of the dev tool ecosystem, kind of, if I understand, AI and ML oriented
Yep.
tools.
Yep.
And what we are here to talk about today is something which is relevant to everybody. Honestly, everybody who's building anything, but it's particularly interesting for developers and dev tool companies, which is launching a product. At some point, you build something, you have something that's ready to go, and you're ready to bring it to market. And go to market is a big word, but there are a couple of tried and tested pathways that dev tools companies at least take when it comes to launching a product. And one of those, which has become very well known over the last several years, is a site called Hacker News. And what we are here to talk about is we're going to pick your brain a little bit, Kuba, and hear from you. We're going to try to give our listeners a tactical breakdown of how they can best leverage Hacker News to put themselves in the position of success to launch their product. So with that, I want to say, and we'll get to this a little bit more at the end. I mean, in addition to your work at Neptune, you also have a very prominent dev marketing Slack community, and you also have created a very popular blog and resource resource for dev marketers called Developer Market Pair. We'll link to all those things in a bit. But that's the reason why you were such a natural choice to speak to, is because you've done a lot of work in product launches for developers in general, and particularly for Hacker News. So maybe just to jump into it, can you tell us a little bit, for somebody who might not be as acquainted, quickly, what is Hacker News and why is it such a powerful platform to use for launching?
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Flo here. We're actually, co-running this community with two other folks. And whoever wants to learn more about dev marketing, dev tools marketing, Hacker News launches as well. We would love to have you in there as well. All right, so I will link to that for sure. But
Sure.
Going back to Hacker News and why is it a great place. So I think there is you want to, as a dev tool company, you want to present your product in places where people are open to new products, new tools, new interesting ideas, right? And the same goes for the products, the same goes for the problems that you're solving. Sometimes you don't yet have a product, but you understand the problem very well. That could be enough. And Hacker News is sort of that place, because it's filled with folks who are deeply technical, who are driven by curiosity. A lot of them are founders or were founders in previous lives. A lot of those folks are devs or senior engineers, managers of those engineering teams, CTOs, and it's a huge website. I think it's like 6 million uniques a month or something like that.
Crazy.
It's huge,
Crazy
right?
traffic. Sure.
Yeah. So if you can, get in there with the right product and the right message and package it in a way that is good for that community, that could be a huge boost for your especially initial traction, and one thing that is sometimes something that people don't think about, but it's super important, especially when you're early with your with your product, you're launching something, right? You want early adopters, because if you go with your super early product to somebody who is this pragmatic buyer, thinking about this crossing the chasm sort of terminology, right? If you go to a pragmatic buyer with early stage product, they would just look at you and they ask, well, what? Yeah, but where's the full documentation? Where's
Right.
video courses, or and you're like, listen, man, I just created with a friend, over a weekend, or like, what do you mean, where courses and SOC 2 certification, whatever it is. So you want to have a place where you can present that product and people are open to new things, new problems being solved by not quite, finished or not quite, complete solutions, but solutions that make sense, solutions that solve real problems that those devs have.
For sure, and I think that's a great point, and that kind of is a great way to frame Hacker News. I mean, it's on the one hand it's a very competitive place, as you mentioned, that it's got so much traffic and there's so many people trying to fight for what ends up being the 30 spots on the front page. But at the same time, it's also very open to just people who are being real and raw and just want to share what they're working on. And there's not a lot of judgment as far as like you said, the buff and polish of of the product.
Yeah.
I also just want to frame quickly, just for folks who might not be as familiar with Hacker News, that Hacker News is a place where you can share a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's not just for launches. Anybody who goes to the site will see at the top that there's a number of, I guess you could think of them as tabs or filters, and you can submit there. You can read stuff that are being shared, but you could also submit, new products. You could submit an article or a blog post that you found interesting, or some other resource. It's a wide-ranging platform, but for today, that what I'm specifically focusing on today, and what we're talking about today, is the tab that's called Show, HN Show, which is the resource that Hacker News gives to developers and to the developer community to be able to show off, exactly like you just said, to show off the stuff that they're working on and the stuff that they want other people to check out. And so with that, I wanted to get your take on what types of products, in your opinion, are best suited to launch on Hacker News. If I have, is it any B2C product, any B2B product? Is it just dev tools? Is there some kind of scope that you could give to things that are relevant to Hacker News before we get into the specifics?
Yeah. I think you could launch a lot of different products. But I think what's specific about Hacker News is there are a few biases in there. Sort of like you have a bigger chance, or way bigger chance, because just because of who goes there, right? Who's there. And I think something that is, for me, it makes it the top place to launch is like, a lot of the infra products, a lot of the backend products, a lot of those sort of DevTool things. Ideally, if they're open source or have open source component, then you're gonna have a bigger chance of success. And I think what's sort of different slightly from other communities, other places where you can launch, like Product Hunt, where Flo, who is here on the call, is he knows that space extremely well. Is on Product Hunt, for example, you'd see a lot of things that may be relevant to early stage founders, et cetera, right? Like those are, or the companies that are in an early stage, or like people, building in public, things like that. So like a lot of the front end products, and things of that nature. Whereas on Hacker News, if you have like a very deeply technical infra product that only speaks to a platform team, somewhere deep in the org, this is your place to be. Like right. Those products typically, at least from what I see, they're not as strong. They don't do as well on in those other places. Whereas here, the more complex problem you solve, and the more tricky and curiosity driven, I guess, is the solution. And you can speak to that curiosity, the higher the chance you have to succeed.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would also maybe just add, from what I've seen, is that in addition to the things that you're mentioning, I think sometimes even the small utilities and like the curiosity-based, widgets and solutions and, utilities that people build, as long as, if somebody wants to share a quick open source project they're working on, or, hey, I built this tool to solve this for me, it plays exactly into the curiosity that you're mentioning. But I've seen it both at large scale with the big complex solutions, but I think also with the smaller indie projects that people create, I think that Hacker News is also a great place for that. But exactly like you said, it plays into the technicalities of curiosity. It's a highly technical audience, and an audience that's very curious and likes to explore. So before we dive in, what I want to do with the remainder of our time, just to frame it, is, I want to hear a little bit about the work that you've done to kind of analyze Hacker News posts. I know you've done a lot of work, both in terms of posting general content and maybe also for product launches. So I'd love to hear if you have any, general guidelines of do's and don'ts of what makes up a good or a really bad Hacker News post. And then what I'd love to do is to go specifically into the details of the HN Show, the actual product launch form, which is not very complicated, and just kind of walk through the components quickly for everybody and say what, show everybody what a potentially successful launch would look like. But let's start from the high level. Tell us a little bit about your research with HN content and HN submissions.
Yeah. So one thing, that sort of like that started, me going deeper and trying to like really sort of map out this audience a little bit better was actually an interesting case where my article on running ads on the developer audience hit not only the front page but the first place. And
Wow.
I didn't submit it, but somebody else did, and it went all the way up, stayed there for half a day or something like that on the first page for probably a day and something, which was huge, obviously, for traffic for me. But it was super interesting for me to see so many people talk about marketing, so many developers, hardcore devs, Hacker News devs talk about it. And
Interesting.
and yeah, we'll link to that article. But some of the interesting things that came from this were, that the devs, they really like transparency. That would be a big thing. And it's on Hacker News, but not only. Like they really like transparency. They have a super heavy bias for persuasion, basically, or against persuasion.
Right.
So if you're trying to persuade and you're not transparent about it, that's the worst combination. And I think that's something that a lot of folks would do in other different places, where you'd basically construe this narrative within a post, that basically talks about a problem. But basically, if you get all the way to the end, it's sort of like a pitch. It's a pitch,
Right.
but it's not explicitly mentioned that it is a pitch, right? So
Right.
so I think those are some of those interesting things. And then when you think about, then I actually went and looked, over time. I spent a lot of time on Hacker News, and it's one of my favorite places to be. Actually, when I wake up in the morning, and I don't want to move too much so that my daughter doesn't wake up, and then I have to wake up, right? So I scroll a little bit, and Hacker News is my scrolling place. So I looked at who's doing really, really well, and one of the companies over time that would come up time and time again was Tailscale. And
Sure.
Tailscale would basically get to that top page with many products, many blog posts, and I started thinking, like, what is special, what is special about them? And I went and I looked at probably like 10 plus successful articles that they had, and try to extract what do they do, right? What is specific about how they
Sure.
do it. And the thing that that struck me was how deeply technical those articles are. Those are basically articles that that you read a few sentences and this is written by a dev. Like there's zero chance
Right.
it's not. Right. So it's someone who really understands this problem, and it speaks to the curiosity too. So like they would just go and explain the solution, not saying, hey, we solved this for, and explain, what are the benefits. You don't do that. You do that through the problem. You explain the problem. And actually, I saw a framework, you could say, within those articles that they had, that basically started with them introducing the problem, right? Then talking about, so like this is the problem, but obvious solution would be to connect it through SSH to some, whatever it is. Like obvious solution is that. And that obvious solution doesn't work because this, and that technical detail. And then they introduced, so we understood that we could basically fix it, and they introduced a product or a feature or whatever it is. And then they talk about how exactly does that feature work, and they explain it almost that you could implement it, and they go into technicalities, a lot of those different things. And then they say, well, but if you don't want to implement this, because we just explained how difficult it is, right, by telling you how to do it, you can also use it. And that's the action.
Right.
So basically, if you think about it, it's like the standard ADA in some ways, right? Framework, the sales framework.
Sure.
But converted to a format that is very transparent and very devy. And you still talk about those benefits, but you understand that it's easier to connect with that reader by explaining that you really, really understand the problem, and by extension, you understand them. And I think this is the hardest part to do, and that's something that it's those articles. Like if you have resources, like your CDO wants to write them, or something like you have founders who could write them, etc. Or then great, but it's not something that it's easy to do for someone who cannot really resonate at that deep technical level.
Right? That's true. And I think that's a great way to frame, I think, dev marketing in general, is that's kind of the characteristic that runs throughout marketing to developers, and makes it, I think, just different than marketing to any other type of persona, is that you really have to force yourself to continually go back to and just strip away any fluff, any salesmanship, anything that smells like real marketing. You just want to try to be as genuine and as specific and as detailed and as upfront about the problem and the solution and the different things that are out there. I think that really cuts to it.
Show me the options and let me choose, right? Like I remember one dev told me that when I was, we were discussing some website, and he said that, hey, like, I don't want one CTA here. Like, why, you tell me what to do. Like, show me the options and let me choose.
Exactly. And I think that's even the structure of Hacker News, I think, just alludes to that, because they give you a place for content, and it's Hacker News in your main feed, and they have one specific place where it's like, hey, you want to show me what you're building, you want to invite me to try it in a real authentic way, that's fine, but let's keep it in a very specific tab, in a show tab. I'll show you authentically what I'm building. I'll tell you why I solved it, and maybe that's a good segue to the next question I have, which is, now let's talk specifically about the show submission itself. So I'm a new user. I have a GitHub repository or some open source tool or a dev tool, and I'm ready to show it off to a potentially relevant audience. And I come to Hacker News. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize for Hacker News, which makes it really accessible, is that it's free. Literally anybody on the planet can create an account and can submit content, can submit tools, and that's also what makes it really attractive to early stage, either indie developers or early stage companies. This is not a marketing expense. This is really just an experiment that you can run, and if you set yourself up for success, it can have really, really exponentially high payoff if you can do it well. And so, with that in mind, I want to look at what a potentially successful Hacker News show launch actually looks like. So I'm here in front of a browser, and I'm actually going to open up. There's a submit button on the top right. You can submit anything you want, and what a person will see. And by the way, if you can Google Hacker News, if anybody's following along and wants to see, it's just, you can Google Hacker News, but the actual domain is news.ycombinator.com. And under the submit tab, so you basically see three fields. One of them is title, one of them is URL, and one of them is text. So title is going to be obviously whatever we call the product, and with the show, if you're actually launching something, so you'll prefix it with the show HN prefix. The URL will obviously be wherever you want to lead people, and then there's a text. So maybe with your kind of framing before, could you speak a little bit to what a person would want to make sure they either do or don't do if I'm going to launch a product in either of those three fields?
Yeah, 100%. I actually have I have a really good example on that website you mentioned. It comes from Fly.io. I mean, I try to swipe a lot of those good examples when I see them. And Fly.io, I really loved how they do marketing, how they approach messaging and brand, how they brand feels to developers, and it's really great. And their Hacker News launch was really successful. And when you think about it, launches are basically how Y Combinator would want show HN to look like, right? Because launch is only reserved to Y Combinator startups, right? And obviously all of those launches, they will get some help from advisors at Y Combinator of how to write those things, etc. as well. So if you want to look for good examples, it's also good to look at launch, so that then you can do show that is sort of similar in format. And this format seems to be pretty consistent, and similar if you look at it. And this particular example from Fly.io, what they do is they started by saying, hey, we're Kurt, Jerome, and Michael from Fly.io, so you're explicit, or sometimes they say you're founders of something, or we're builders of something, etc. And they say that they were building a platform to run Docker apps close to end users, something like content delivery network, but for backend servers, right? So you introduce your product right away, but you introduce yourself as ideally founders or builders, and then you start saying what it is, and then you switch to talking about a problem. And a lot of those good launches, they have this longer discussion or longer paragraph explain that, hey, we were building billing services for the fifth client, and we saw that this is horrible, and we decided to build something better, right? So in their case, they say something like that they they use CDNs to deliver some stuff, and then they understood that for backend those things don't exist, and they had problems with that, and and so like they explained this problem that they had, right? And and then they say how they want to solve it, right? So they explain what they do and how they do it, right? So they explain super technically with the jargon that FlyIO is really a way to run Docker images on servers in different cities and global router to connect users to the nearest available instance.
Right.
We convert you, and then they say how, right? They say we convert your Docker image into root file system, boot tiny VMs using a project called Firecracker that was recently discussed on HN, and then proxy connections to it. Do I understand what it is, exactly what this means? No. And it's good. I shouldn't understand it. Like, unless I'm the target audience, I probably shouldn't understand what they're talking about. And that's the key. Because sometimes, and a lot of times, people talk about, hey, like you should talk about your product so that your grandma understands. And I agree with the statement only if your grandma is a dev, is your target dev. Then I'm 100% with you. But other than that, otherwise, I think no, like you're actually like, this is your place, this is your spot to build that connection. And if you use my language coming from my tribe, so to speak, right, the group of devs that I identify with, like you can build this connection. And it's the best way to build it is by explaining that you understand me, you understand my problem.
And so just to summarize it, just to make a little bit of order here. So just to summarize for the folks, so we talked about having a clear title. And by the way, I want to just correct. I hear Pradumna, our dev advocate, pointed out to me here in the DMs that I may have mentioned before that I mistakenly suggested that you put the show HN prefix in the title in brackets. That's actually not correct. If you look just at the examples there, you just write show space HN : and then you write your title. And as you mentioned, the title should be clear, to the point. Your description should be also clear, human, and to the point. So human in the sense that you should introduce yourself. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm building this. I'm doing this. You should talk about the problem, why it is that you built it. And then you should just present the no frills, no fluff presentation of the solution. This is how we thought about solving it, and we built this tool, and we'd be thrilled to get your feedback. And in terms of the link, this is actually something that I've noticed. I don't have scientific proof to prove this, but I do notice that the extent to which you can keep the link more devy, more technical, it seems to perform better. So for example, if you have a GitHub repository that's hosting your project, and you also have some sort of fancy marketing page that's called whatever, Kuba.com to put in front of it, if you have to choose between the two, at least in my opinion, it would be better to link in Hacker News to the GitHub repository, because the audience
100%. I actually saw some folks do it with like sort of, it's not abusing, but it's like sort of like you can have like your blogs on GitHub as well, right? So some folks did that, and especially in the early days they would do it and use it to push folks there as well. And I think it's not a bad idea. But like, like as you said, like if you can send me to somewhere devy, like you're like, I believe this picture even more, right? Like if you're talking about this, that you built it, and you, hey, show me how I built, show me how to use it, and you send it to GitHub README or GitHub, just to so those people see, and then they follow, and they stay in the environment that they like. Hacker News, GitHub, their terminal to fire it up and try it out, and then they give you feedback. This is ideal.
Totally.
Totally.
So yeah. I actually then want to just move ahead one more step to the last couple minutes of today's conversation. That is, okay, so we have this great idea, we have a great tool, we have our description, we've stripped out all the fluff and all the marketing language. We're really just talking directly to our audience with clear problem statements and benefits, and not even benefits, but just describing what the product does and how it solves the problem. That's all great. Now the question is, once I submit it to Hacker News, what happens next? So, there is a mechanism of upvoting and of commenting. I think it's also important to point out to the folks, and maybe if you want to touch on this for a minute, Hacker News is a bit of a black box. It's not like there's a clear algorithm or a clear way to know what exactly is going to hit the front page. Front page is a huge payoff if you can get there. And you said that you were the top article. I imagine that drove thousands of unique visitors to whatever site you were linking to. It's really incredible. But what happens after what happens after I post my project? Do I then take that link and send it to all my friends? What happens next?
Yeah, like so as you mentioned, a lot of it is black box, and then even recently, I read an article from a person who basically got almost banned from Hacker News, a blogger, for spamming Hacker News. Where in reality, what happened was that he would just write very technical blogs, and his readers, they would like he'd put them on Hacker News, and his readers would upvote when they liked it, and some often they liked it, and sometimes it would happen that he would even have two articles and on the front page, and there's not even clear sort of like boundaries for if for when he almost got banned without doing
Right.
anything wrong. So it's sort of a bit finicky. It's the moderation is very heavy, and it's, as far as I understand, it's done by two folks from Y Combinator, mostly Dang, and there's another person, but like I don't know how they do it, but they actually keep this reasonably spam, light on spam, and
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
super interesting. So I don't know what they do. It is definitely not automated. It's not clear. Like those guidelines are not super clear. So this person that will get those articles on the front page time and time again, he mentioned that, like, for him, the only thing over time that he saw that was strongly correlated with this working for articles, not for a show HM, but for articles, was that they are actually curiosity driven, great, great,
Right.
really great, well researched, thoughtful content, net new, something you can disagree with, that and discuss. But as you mentioned, like, do you send a link? Like, you definitely want, like, ideally you want to go from this when you put it on show Hacker News, you first landed this new show new or something like that, right? There's this
Sure.
there's this page, and you want to be upvoted there to land on the show first, and then you're gonna land on the hopefully on the front page, right?
Right.
But you don't want to send folks to that particular link, because that, as far as I know, obviously, as you mentioned, it's a bit of a black box. But if you send your friends there to upvote, like, this will kill
Well, so
your
just to
host
be clear,
potential.
though, so when you say this link, I mean, my understanding of it was that you don't want to link directly to your post,
Yeah.
but if you tell people, hey, check out the latest products on, Hacker News, the show tab or the show new tab, and you tell them, hey, look for Neptune, look for LiveCycle, or look for this post that I just posted there. My understanding is that is something which is okay. It's what you don't want to
Yes.
do is you don't want to use the link to your direct specific post and have all these kind of referral tags at the end and have Hacker News detect that you're trying to spam and cheat your way into the top.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And in that way, like, so in that way, this is actually completely reversed from what Product Hunt, for example, wants. They want you to share a link to your particular product.
Right.
So it is like they want to disincentivize this behavior, and actually it's like not clear, like, if if to me is whether, if you share it and you have a bigger group of people from from the same IP from your company, upvoting, even if they went through this clear route,
Sure.
does it count against you? Is it like shadowed a little bit or a lot, potentially? So for that, I'm not quite sure. And it seems that even people who got successfully time and time again on the front page, they don't really know.
Yeah,
It's
I think the most successful ongoing projects are the ones that are authentic. But again, just to keep it safe and to make it very specific and tactical for the users, to recap, don't share your link, don't try to spam the system. Just try to be authentic, and it's okay to share with your close friends or colleagues and family, but do it, let's say, with a screenshot. Take a screenshot of your submission, send them the link to the show new. And actually, I wonder, because what we're gonna do now is actually, if whoever's listening and whoever wants to participate, we're actually going to do a live demo of a Hacker News launch, just so people can see what it looks like and people can kind of experience that. Not just the launch itself, but the post-launch authentic distribution, of that screenshot of that content. So maybe what I could ask, I'm going to ask Pradumna, who's here with us. He is our dev advocate. Pradumna, would you mind sharing the link to the show new tab? So there's the Hacker News in the comments here. There's the show new tab where it takes you specifically to the Hacker News new submissions. If Pradumna could post that in the comments, that would be great. I see here another comment question about what is this about. Well, if anybody's just joined, we're about to show a live example of how to launch a DevTools product on Hacker News. And what I'm going to also ask Pradumna to do, and he's going to do it from his account, is I'm going to ask him to actually submit our tool. Now we have a dev tool that we're just about to roll out. It's a tool that we've submitted to the Docker for Desktop Extensions Marketplace. So if there's anybody there building with Docker Compose, building stuff in that framework, you can use our extension to share your local dev environment instantly with a colleague. If you don't have to wait for a preview environment or a CI build in order to get feedback. You can literally just click a button, create a secure tunnel to your local environment, and send a link to your friend who could be across the world, and that colleague or friend of yours can instantly access and see your environment, see the latest changes in action, and then can provide feedback for you. It's a tool that we built to really speed up the collaborative process and to make it a lot easier for distributed dev teams to just do their work and focus on that, not have to worry about the infra or the DevOps side of things. And so we are going to launch that. We're going to launch that right now on Hacker News. I've already pre-populated some of these fields based on the different tips that we've talked about, just kind of being direct and being clear. I just want to wait for Pradumna, see if he's done that. Has he done it? Oh, okay, so Pradumna has sent, let's see, I'm just refreshing my own display. Pradumna posted the link there of news.ycombinator.com/show new. It's in the comments section here. I'm just waiting for confirmation. There we go, and it is live. So if anybody wants to go now to that URL that Pradumna has posted and look at the top, maybe Pradumna, is there any way that we could even share a screenshot of that? The actual Twitter mobile app's a little bit buggy, so it's a little bit hard for me to toggle back and forth between the two views. But if anybody wants to go, it's called the title is "Share Local Docker Compose Apps, Get Changes Reviewed Instantly." That's the title, and we invite everybody here who's listening to go ahead and go to that place and tag it. I also want to mention, Kuba, one thing that's been really interesting to me is that I didn't realize how responsive the Hacker News folks are. So there's been a couple of times when I've tried to submit something and they didn't like it. So for example, I was submitting some blog posts that were interesting posted on dev.to, and I posted them and they didn't show up. And at some point I reached out to them and I said, hey, can you guys explain to me what's going on? And they actually replied, and they were very friendly and very straight. And they said, we don't allow certain platforms, to publish stuff here. We think it's not, the quality is not, at a certain standard that we're trying to maintain. But the point is that if you ever have a question about what's allowed or not allowed, or you want some tips or tricks, you can actually reach directly out to them, and they'll probably be willing to share some honest feedback with you. So that was something which was interesting to me. I also, is there anything else before we get to the general closing comments and ideas? Is there anything else that you, Kuba, want to share with us or with the audience when it pertains to Hacker News generally or Hacker News launches specifically? But before we get to some closing remarks from Kuba, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank Kuba for his participation and for sharing his knowledge. Again, I want to encourage everybody to check out what we just posted on Hacker News, and feel free to upvote and leave a comment. Try out the app itself. I do want to say that one of the things that Kuba is doing that is really, really helpful to the broader development community is he mentioned his Slack channel, which we will post in a comment to this tweet. And he also has developer markepair.com, which is a great newsletter and resource for anybody who's in the field of dev tools and dev marketing. Even if you're not a marketer per se, if you're a founder or a product person, if you're just looking to find ways to better promote your developer tools products to your audience, I highly recommend it. Thousands of other people are already there. And you can subscribe and you can get in touch with Kuba and tap into his knowledge there. Obviously, follow him on social, on LinkedIn and on Twitter and elsewhere. And obviously, is there anything else you want to share with us in terms of Hacker News or developer marketing in general, or anything else cool that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I always try to be helpful, and I just when I clicked on the link that you shared, the submission. I don't know if you saw it, but the link wasn't working. The main link wasn't working. When I clicked, there was a problem, I think, with something got caught a little bit. So do check that.
I do see that. That is true. That is true. Now that's actually a good troubleshooting question.
Yeah. I mean,
what do we do with that?
I don't know. So for this one, I probably like you probably have an option to edit this still, like at the beginning. I'd probably edit, but I don't know. I try to, like, for those things, I really try to make sure and sort of like checklist it. I mean, it's simple, but it's like, it's a simple checklist here, right? But it
right.
sounds like, yeah, it's problematic when you do that, and then after some time you realize. I remember, like, just want to share one story here. I remember somebody sharing that where they sort of shared something that I worked on a blog on Hacker News, and it got super successful, and they didn't think it through, and they didn't think, okay, so like if people resonate with this and they love the blog, they are super interested, what do they do next? And there was like almost like no next action, right? So they didn't yet have a website. I think, like, the blog was somewhere. They didn't have the website. There was no sign up buttons, no nothing like that. And it I think, luckily they had a GitHub repo, so people went there and started and basically knew that it was there. But it could have been more signups maybe for the initial launch of the product, etc. So anyway, but yeah, as for me, yeah, come to our community, check out my website, check out the newsletter. If you I do a little bit of DevTool marketing advising. So if you're into that, you can also reach out. It's just a little bit on top of my full time, but yeah. And yeah, other than that, let me know if you have any dev marketing thoughts, trouble, etc. Reach out, and yeah, let's try and solve it.